Hello, everyone, and welcome to the July 29th edition of the Decaturish.com Twitch Show. I'm your host, editor, and publisher Dan Wisenhunt, and we've got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about mental health. I know a lot of our readers are struggling with depression and anxiety and other feelings that they have because of the pandemic and the collective stress that we're all going through. So I wanted to invite some experts on today to talk about it. And our guests today are Jason Waller, who owns Waller's Coffee Shop. Jason, how are you?
I am doing mediocre, thank you.
Thank you. Me too, buddy. We have Laura Morse, who is a professional counselor. Laura, how are you?
All right. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. We have Christina Carrick, who is also a therapist. Christina, how are you?
I'm great today. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And we have Zach Mitchell, who is the director of iResearch ATL, and Heather Bites, who is the co-owner of iResearch ATL. How are y'all doing?
Great.
Well today, are you? Well.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. So just to give you a quick rundown of how this works, we're going to be chatting for just a little bit. I'm going to ask our guests to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about what they do, and then we're going to roll into some questions. If you have a question you would like to ask one of our panelists today about mental health, you're going to want to go ahead and create a Twitch profile and give us a follow, and then you can ask your question in the chat log, and we will try to get our experts here to answer. If you've got any questions at all, please just drop us. We got a new follower. Thank you. If you have a question, just put it in the chat. So, Jason, I want to start with you because you own Waller's Coffee Shop, and I know some people watching this might be thinking, well, why has he got a coffee shop owner on this panel with all these licensed counselors and therapists? But it's because of the focus that your company has on mental health is why I wanted to bring you on. So, can you tell us a little bit about that story?
Yeah, I can try to condense it.
Yeah.
When I started this, I wanted to make a music venue, coffee shop, mental health outreach, specifically breaking the stigma attached to mental health and learning how to talk about it, and then realizing that we're all on a journey together, and how can we be there for each other and then show up for ourselves. I've struggled being depressed and anxious my whole life, and I guess I was supposed to turn 41 this year, but I postponed it because we can't happen. So that having this meeting place to help the community have the coffee shop is the perfect place for these types of interactions. You hear about it all the time. Oh, let's meet up for a coffee. It's way better than meeting up with a beer if you want to have a productive conversation. But that's kind of it in a nutshell. It was one of the three things I wanted to focus. And early on, I kind of came to this realization that our greatest weakness and struggles are also our greatest strengths. And so I leaned into that and kind of realized that I would say more than 1 out of 5 adults suffer from some type of mental health. And we all have emotions and we all wrestle with them. And our brain is still a mystery. So, yeah, I guess that's the short end of it. I'm more of an advocate than a professional, or just a sufferer, if you will.
So I'm right there with you, brother. And where's your coffee shop located again? I know it's in Decatur, but what's the address?
Yeah, it's just a mile out of Decatur. It's 240 DeKalb Industrial Way. You'll pass it if you head to the DeKalb Farmers Market. We're right across the street from Dearborn Animal Hospital, and there's an acre of land. There's a creek out back and some woods, and I've gotten to know the animals out there. It's I've been taking mandatory nature breaks. I get up from my desk and just walk the trails that I got behind there.
Good for you. That's a very healthy activity. Laura, talk to us about you. What's your line of work, and how did you get into your field?
Sure. So how I got into my field, people always ask if I'm a therapist, and I guess, we all have our family of origin stories. So, and I don't say that to be disrespectful to my family. It's just what it is. You come to a place in your life where you look at, or I looked at, different dynamics, different situations, and my journey to feel connected to something business wise and connecting to others, I thought, well, maybe psychology would be a good thing to do. And so it's been something that I've been very passionate about and practicing for over 20 years. I started off in psychiatric, ground zero work at behavioral hospitals, and then transitioned to community mental health, and then to residential treatment for substance abuse and recovery, to private practice. So the benefit of that is just to meet a plethora of people and issues, and really see the strength those who are willing and able to get help, because it is not for the weak sometimes to go through a recovery process. A lot of times people think that it is, and we pass judgment on it. But to Jason's point, it's so important to me. I'm so passionate about the idea of reducing the stigma, because that shame and guilt prevents people from asking for help. And I just don't believe that we need to and deserve to suffer because we need a little bit of support or a lot of support. So that's kind of what motivates me. And it's I feel like it's my life's work. It's just what I feel like I've been called to do.
Thank you very much. Heather and Zach, tell us about iResearch Atlanta. What do you do, and what is iResearch Atlanta about?
So, Heather here. We do clinical trials for new medications to be in line for approval by FDA. And that can be very stigmatizing as well, in that people have different feelings on medication. I guess we believe in not everybody's made to be on a medication. We also offer other avenues of help, be it therapy, and when somebody needs a medication, a clinical trial might be an option. We've learned a lot about clinical trials through Dr. Fauci recently, talking about what's up with the vaccine trials and hydrochloroquine. So that's what we do. We see the patients who participate in clinical trials.
Awesome. And Christina, what's your story? You're a licensed counselor, or how did you get into this field, and what do you do?
Yeah, so I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and very similar to Laura's story. I think between life experiences and I think just knowing, I'd always wanted to work with kids, and so kind of going down the nursing path, didn't want to do that. Teaching, and so I think going into social work, that allowed me. Social work is very vast, and it allows you to go in different avenues, and that's what drew me to it. So, and I've been really lucky to kind of do a lot of things. I've worked in the hospitals. I've worked in children's hospitals in Florida. I've worked with pregnant parenting teens, and I've been in private practice for about 2.5 years. Previous to that, I was with DeKalb County Schools for about 6 years. And so my passion, and I think my specialty is working with kids who are experiencing anger, behavior issues, anxiety, depression, and I love working with parents also to kind of help navigate that. So and trauma, and we're seeing a lot of that. So so my office, I'm with Carrot Counseling. That's my practice, and I'm in Decatur Square.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. And what you just said is a great segue into my first question, which is, what, in your view, is the current state of mental health care in this country? Are we doing enough to help each other on that front? We'll start with you, Jason.
Well, just healthcare in general. I'd love it if the people with all of my tax dollars would spend that on considering mental health as something that could be covered. Going to a counselor is great. Taking medications with, a doctor prescribing them, obviously, is great if that works for you. And it's expensive. That's why I don't go to counseling right now. It's expensive. But the internet is free most of the time. So I use my network to, if anything I've learned from support systems in the last 4 months is that it's your family, it's your friends, it's your community that's going to take care of you, or not. And so it's been really cool to see that live out and play out here with Waller's Coffee Shop community that has drawn themselves together. I can't really take credit for it. I'm just, I just put my name on it and cash all the checks.
All that big money.
All that big money.
It's like the journalism money.
I would say it's just it's expensive, and I know that there's a lot of great therapists, but they've got to charge something. They've got to make money too, and so I've definitely bartered in the past for mental health care, but yeah, for like anything past that, I don't feel qualified to really.
Well, that's okay, because that's one of the reasons I wanted you on, is to talk about it from a layman's perspective, and also talk about access to healthcare, which is what we're going to talk about later on in the show. Laura, what is your opinion of the current state of mental health care in the United States?
It is very frustrating to be a therapist and know that it could benefit so many people, and so many people cannot get access to it. It is incredibly expensive, and expensive is relative, right? So if you have therapists in Atlanta that might charge anywhere from, let's say, 85, which could be really on the low end, to $200 something an hour, and that $85 could buy a whole week's worth of groceries for a family, right? You're going to choose food over the other. And so to your point, yes, people need to make money in this business, but it is sad to see so many people needing support, and especially now, and not being able to get it. I used to be on a few insurance panels, and I was grateful to start out that way in my practice. It helped me get business, but they cut my rate considerably. The benefit was that people who had benefits could come and see me. But I saw a shift over the time. It was first they would have a copay. If they were lucky, it was like $20 copay. Great. Then it became, now I have this $5,000 deductible. I'm like, you're not going to do $5,000 worth of therapy with me. That's probably not your goal, right? And so I'd see clients really trying to decide, what do I do, or I need to back out. But for some, it was very, very hard to make those choices. And sad to me. And so what I would try to do is look and see what other resources are available within the Atlanta metro area. And if you make a little bit over a certain amount, then you're not going to qualify for that, right? So there are organizations, community mental health care, DeKalb service board, or whatever, they're available, but you hard to get into. You might need to be in extreme situations. It's tough to being kind of like in this middle ground of wanting support for yourself or your family. And so a lot of people go untreated, right? And that's across the board. And then, you add on top of that the stigmas that are attached to it, and people not even feeling comfortable with reaching out and saying, I actually need help. Where do I go? Right. So I think that it could stand to be better. One thing that made me happy recently, and I'll keep it short, is that DeKalb County is putting money into DeKalb Community Service Board to provide telemental health to people, to have more access. And I don't know the scope of that. There are sometimes that this kind of interaction, people want to be in the space and company with others, right? To do it via Zoom is better than nothing, but there's something about this human interaction that is very healing in and of itself. So, you do the best that you can with the situation, but if nothing else, giving people more access to any kind of care is better than nothing.
Heather and Zach, what is your opinion of the current state of mental health care in the United States?
A lot of dittos to everything that Jason and Laura said. We have people that come into our office every single day because they have nowhere else to go. They're desperate and they need help and they don't know where to turn. We have a lot of advocacy groups in the area. You have NAMI, DeKalb, NAMI Georgia, MHA, Active Minds. But unless you know how to get involved and navigate all of their programs, it's overwhelming. So I think you have two sides, right? You have people that can go and pay $200 for therapy and not think about it, and then you have people that they don't know how to get in touch with NAMI, and they don't have the resources to. So I still think that it's very broken. And until, there is something that's more standardized, I'm not really sure what happens except for things like this that help.
Yes.
Christina, what about you? What is your opinion of the current state of mental health care in the United States of America?
And yeah, I'll piggyback on what everybody said. It's frustrating for me when I hear from a lot of people, and myself included, is that a lot of insurance companies don't cover it. They don't cover behavioral health. And I think on top of that, Laura had mentioned it's difficult for clients to even reach out for help to begin with. And so when they do that, that's great. But then there's another layer of, hey, I can't afford this. Do you offer sliding scale? That's a question that nobody wants to ask, right? It's embarrassing in kind of in any realm. And so there's so many layers to, having the courage to say, hey, I need help. Can you help me? And also, hey, can you basically drop down your fees for me? And it's just it's just unfortunate. It really is unfortunate. And I think there are many times where I've been involved in programs where children or families have access, but I think sometimes it's hard because a lot of times they are dealing with large caseloads. So I worry about kind of are they getting the quality of the care that they need? And so it's all across the board. It's just frustrating.
So we'll start our next question with you, Christina, and then work our way back around. What are the things you're hearing the most right now? I know it's going to sound like a dumb question because the problems seem fairly obvious, right? The stressors are my kid can't go to school, I may or may not have lost income, I may or may not have a health condition that makes me worried about getting sick. What are some of the common things that you're hearing in your practice as people come to you right now looking for help?
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of parents having their kids are just kind of having a lot of behavior issues, which is so common because that's kind of how they communicate is their behavior, right? So their brains aren't fully developed. They can't say like us, like this day is really stressing me out. I can't leave the house. And so I'm hearing a lot from parents that we're having a lot of behavior issues, which is common, right? They're stressed just like we are, and a lot of anxiety, which is across the board for everybody, therapists included. And so it's in depression. I think anxiety, depression, and with kids, just acting that out in behavior. Yeah, it's a lot.
Heather,
it's too much.
Heather and Zach, what about you? What are you hearing a lot of?
What I'm hearing a lot of is just COVID, mask, everything, fatigue, and it's very sad because I'm also feeling it. I know you're feeling it, and so it takes empathy to a new level. Is that today I met with a man who's the single father of 4 kids, and he's such a great dad, and they're varied ages, and he's like, the kids just want to do something. He's having a hard time communicating with them about why they can't do anything. It just and it has affected his mental health to an extent that we're having to assess. It's that's what we're hearing is just the fatigue.
Yeah, I'm glad you said something because it reminded me of something I was telling a friend the other day. As a parent, you want to give your children the world, right? That's what you want. So what happens when the world gets taken away from you?
Yeah.
And you can't give it to them anymore. And they don't understand why. Laura, what are you seeing? What are you hearing?
A lot. I'm going to go down a list, but really the anxiety and grief and loss and anxiety and anger. The grief and loss over so many things, like you said, everything that we knew is different now. It has stopped. And I had a senior in high school. He's graduated, and my daughter is a rising junior at Spelman College. But for my son in particular, like this is going to be here, right? And there was so much to look forward to. and to celebrate, and then there wasn't. And so trying to just navigate in very real time what it means to go through different grief cycles. And we know that it doesn't start from point A to point, Z. It's not like that. It's all over the place. So we would cycle through anger and then bargaining and then sadness and back to anger, and he would stay in anger, and then I would get in anger, and so that, and then trying to be a therapist at the same time and to find comfort for other people. Somebody had asked me in an interview, what do you tell your kids? What can we tell our kids? So I asked my son, I said, I'm going to be speaking to some people. What can I tell them that is helpful, will be helpful to you and your classmates? He's like, nothing. There's nothing that parents can say that is going to make me feel any better right now. And I was like, thank you for being honest. And what it helped me to do is understand that he needed to be in that place and space, and I needed to validate that and nothing else. And then I needed to validate my own feelings around that as well. But the anger part of it, outside of the grief, is the anger. I have a lot of African-American clients, and it is very, very painful time right now, incredibly painful. And so the clients that are working with me are like, I'm dealing with COVID, I'm dealing with fear, I'm dealing with being a parent and feeling inadequate. I'm looking at this world and I'm looking at racial tensions and I'm wondering, what do I do with all of this, right? And so trying to, and I'm sure Christina can speak to this too, trying to work with clients and be supportive of them when they are going through the exact same thing that you're going through, and trying not to project your own stuff onto them because it's their time, right? It's a difficult task, but on a positive note, there's something very important about validating that and letting people know that, we're all feeling inadequate at this moment, or we're all afraid or whatever. And so how can we find strength in being together in that? So those are just some of the things I've been, hearing, but they're all very powerful.
Jason, I had to throw you on mute real quick because we were getting some feedback. But what are your customers telling you? What are you hearing from people? I will say personally, this is no diss to your coffee shop. I just have one that's down the street that's like my neighborhood coffee shop. And it's called Corner Cup. Shout out to them. And your coffee shop's fine too. I've been there. But one of the things that I said would be normal for me would be getting to go to my coffee shop again. What are your customers? What are they telling you?
We're a landing zone for people coming out of quarantine. I've been seeing people that haven't left their house in 4 months, and so they're just bursting for human interaction. The not getting to see your friends, it's not the going out, it's not the activities, it's that human interaction that we are all suffering from, and it is awful, and there's just no getting around that. And so I'm in a position where I need people to wear masks when they're around other human beings, but then they haven't seen each other in forever. They want to hug, like we had some as safe as we could shows this month, and I saw 3 hugs one night, and I was like, I can't do this, guys. Y'all can't be hugging. And it's just bursting from non-interaction with other human beings. I'm seeing, I've seen both sides of people freaking out about the mask thing, and but it's not as many as I would imagine. Or we were prepared for. And so I had to teach my staff de-escalation techniques, which really shouldn't, when I worked in the woods with youth, that was just something we did every day. But this has been a nice, easy ride with my customers are great. Even my every now and then customers are great. They miss people. I miss people. Actually, I don't. I love being by myself. I'm one of those inverted extroverts so I've been enjoying my time at home with the kids. That and the just overwhelmed and anger and outrage, and they're all perfectly acceptable from what's going on in the world. I kind of absorb a lot of it, and it's that in itself is overwhelming, and it kind of puts a burden on my shoulders. And I know those of you who sit in a professional setting, it's just a lot to carry. I still got my own stuff to worry about.
So, talking about the mask question, and we'll start with you on this, Jason. Are people averse to wearing masks, and if so, why? What is the hang up that people have if they have one?
Everybody, it was uncomfortable at first, and I get that. We shut down. I was like almost mid-March, I guess, and we all just kind of took a 1-2 to the face. Was down for 5 days. Came back out. We worked as a tent outside for 16 weeks. And that was awesome. We wore masks the whole time. We weren't requiring people to wear masks because we had people spaced out when we were outside. So it wasn't that big a deal for that period of time. And then we had to shut down for a COVID scare. And then when we reopened, we moved back inside. And at that point, there was just no way I was going to let people inside without a mask. And so we were ready for it. And really, honestly, it was one person that came in, and she came in looking to fight about it. And it was very obvious that she was just there to argue and to yell at us. I unfortunately wasn't there. I would have loved to have been there. I just think it's politically, leaning. It's almost like you can tell who you're going to vote for. It was that way. Changing a little bit in the last week. I feel like Walmart, Costco, Sam's, Kroger, Target, all of these chains are requiring the mask now. And I went to Walmart yesterday for something, and everyone had one on. It was great. I mean, not everybody was wearing it appropriately, but they had them on, and I was looking around and seeing all these people, hopefully because they cared about the other people around them. It's great for me because I don't want to talk to anybody when I'm out and about. So a mask covers me great. I don't know. It's for me, it's just a sign of I'm going to rob your store. It's a sign of, I care about you. I'm going to keep my germs to myself. I mean, it seems simple to me.
Well, let's ask our mental health experts. Laura, what is it with masks? Why are masks such a divisive issue right now? And are you hearing from clients who don't want to wear them, and why?
It's interesting, I guess, because I've chosen to be exclusively do telemedicine, right? I've had a few people that are like, why can't you come in yet? It's basically 6 months later, and I'm like, did you see the charts on the did you look at the numbers? But I can understand that it's not just about that they don't want to wear a mask, but people are really craving that interaction. And I would like to think that they enjoyed sitting in my presence as I enjoy sitting in their presence. But the times where I have been in that space and working with people and then listening to them talk about what they've been doing, it's been a little nerve-wracking. And I realize, like, I have a family too. I have to take care of myself, and I have responsibility to my family to keep them as safe as possible and not forget, why we should, what that looks like, even if the person is like, well, it's safe in here because it's only the two of us. So, but I do think it's about control. I mean, unfortunately, it did get politicized. There's no way around it. People can say what they want, but it did. And you can tell who's on what side. And just having friends and looking at social media, which I know you'll get into, and people that you thought, oh, we were pretty aligned on this. And then you really understand during times like this who is not, right? And so now we're no longer talking about who won the high school basketball game, but we're arguing about facial masks. But everybody has their own narrative, and when people feel out of control, they do things to feel more in control. So for me and a lot of people, it's like, I don't feel in control, so I want to wear a mask so I feel safer. And then I want to protect other people. And some people feel, I don't feel like I'm in control, so I don't want to be uncomfortable in any way, shape, or form. And this mask makes me feel uncomfortable, or it symbolizes something. I mean, there's a lot of things that are swirling around in people's mind that really truly make sense to them, right? They say that perception is reality. And I guess I could respect that more if it wasn't so critically dangerous, right? Some people say, well, I don't know anybody who's been sick, so it's not as bad as they say. And I can say, well, I personally know 3 people, 2 of which have lost their family members, right? And so which one is right? We're both correct, right? And we both have individual responses accordingly. So I think it's really complicated. I just wish it didn't have to be.
Heather and Zach, why do you think masks have become such a divisive issue as we're in the middle of a public health crisis?
I think a lot of what Laura said, and it's in, just being control, I think, right now. So a lot of people are craving the interaction, and then a lot of people don't want to wear them because they're being told they have to wear them. And so that's the control that they get to have right now, that, okay, this is what I do get to control, is the face mask, and it's the only thing that I can control when I'm out in public.
We were seeing people telemedicine wise, and even they would come to our office and we would have somebody take a tablet down to them, and we would do a visit remotely, because they have to fill out some forms for each visit participating in a clinical trial. It's called patient reported outcomes, and that's very important to FDA. What the patient is, patient centric, what the patient is feeling and how they are doing obviously is quite important. And so them filling out those forms, they have to have this tablet from our office in their hands, so we have to clean it and give it to them. And now we've started doing what's so ironic, and I think Laura mentioned this, and it is that now the cases are ticking up, and now we've started seeing people in person again, which is interesting. We've not had any issue with the mask. What we're finding is people want to be as protected as we want to be. So that's our professional life.
Right.
Personally, it's a little different. But
Christina, what about you? What do you think has made masks such a divisive issue, and what are you hearing from your clients about it?
Yeah, I think it's, a lot of people feel like their rights are being violated, right? You can't tell me what to do with my life. And exactly what Laura said, it's a sense of control on both sides, right? I choose to kind of wear my mask, and that's the way that I can control this, at least this point. But I think too, it's even for me when I go to the grocery store, I mean, I'm not used to it yet. It's still, I look around and I just can't believe it. I think the shock has not worn off. I can't believe this is our world. And I think for some people, it's just too much. It's just too much. And so it kind of goes back to, I'm feeling like I'm being pinned to a corner, and I'm going to kind of fight back, and you're violating my rights. And this is the one thing that I can control. So I'm going to do that. And I think for my clients, I do both telehealth, and I have some coming in and it's just kids, only because it's just challenging to do telehealth with younger kids. And I let the families know that they certainly have a choice of whether, they want to do telehealth or come in, but that I take, every safety precaution. And I certainly, I will use judgment that if I feel it's not safe anymore, then I certainly will do strictly telehealth if that's the case.
So you were watching the Decaturish.com Twitch show. I'm your host, editor, and publisher, Dan Wisenhunt. Today's show is about mental health, and we have a range of experts and advocates to talk to you about that. Our guests include Jason Waller, who owns Waller's Coffee Shop, Laura Morse, who's a professional counselor, Christina Carrick, who's also a therapist, Zach Mitchell, and Heather Bites of iResearch Atlanta. We thank them so much for joining us. If you have a question, please jump in and ask us. You need to create a Twitch account and then give us a follow. And once you do that, you can ask some questions. And we actually have a question from Jen, MIT. And we'll start with you, Christina. Jen asks, what are some things that we can do to minimize our stress during this pandemic?
It might sound crazy, but I think first and foremost, I think just giving ourselves grace. This is an extremely stressful time, and I think we do put a lot of pressure on ourselves to just keep moving and keep it going, and that's just not possible some days. So I think if there are days when it feels overwhelming, let it be okay to just, not be your best self that day. That it give yourself some grace. We're putting a lot of pressure on ourselves, I think, just in every normal day-to-day pre-COVID life, and it just seems to be mounting with this, and that's just not. We're not going to be able to function if we continue to do that. So, I think self-care has been thrown around a lot, but it's not more important than it is now. And I can't stress that enough.
Heather and Zach, how would you answer this question?
I can't say amen enough to that, and that give yourself grace. And I'm a big believer in letting people know that is how you're feeling for that day, right?
Yeah.
That today, I told my staff, I announced a couple of days ago, this mask thing is bothering me today. I can't take it. I'm having a hard time processing that I just got a negative COVID test. I know y'all are negative. Why are we wearing these masks when we're having an in-person meeting? It's hard. And I think the fact that I just got it out made me feel better. I don't know how it made everybody else feel, but I think that's part of giving yourself grace and permission just to feel.
Laura?
Agreed.
So everything that Christina and Heather said, and I would say lower expectation. And I really want to say this to parents. And you spoke to this, Dan, the hope that we were not going to be not able to attend schools in August, September, when all of this started to blow up in March, right? It's like, we can get through these summer months, it's going to get better and things will get back to normal, and it isn't. It is so disappointing. And people are really, really scared and hurting. Like, not only, what does it mean to be a parent in these times, but am I going to do right by my kids? When you said you want to give your children the world, like, I felt that in my heart and soul. My kids are older now, right? I served as a PTA president for 3 schools. I wanted to give them so much and be around and witness them. And what I had learned as a parent, but I'm going to say it now, quality over quantity matters. Basic things like food, shelter, and clothing, they still matter. So there are going to be days where if your child is able to eat something and feel safe in the house and they didn't learn a thing, and you think about learning, okay, yes, maths, English, science. There are ways to learn that are not the traditional ways of learning, right? And so if a child is feeling safe in their home and they are protected, and they have a chance to interact and explore and use their imagination, that is still a form of learning. You don't maybe document it the same, but I don't want to discount it now. I think that keeping these kids as safe as possible and really helping them to express their feelings and be okay with being unsure and seeing their parents feel grounded will go a long, long way. Children are so resilient. Christine, I know you can talk working with them. And so a lot of times when children are acting out, it's because they don't feel as contained. And so parents don't know what to do with it, but they are not feeling as safe as they need to feel, but they are unable to verbalize it. And that goes all the way up until adolescence as well. A lot of times adolescents act out and they know that hopefully there'll be some kind of a boundary. Now they might tell you to, fuck off in the middle of that, but they really are like, please give me a stopping point because I can't stop myself. And so I've had to say to my own son, like, son, you're not grown yet. You need to be in the house. You want to go to college. If you don't take care of yourself and protect yourself, you won't get to start. I still have that right to tell you that, we'll see how it goes. But I just want to say, I've had to do it too, lower your expectations, because even if you lower them a little bit, doesn't make you a failure. It actually could make you more aware of slowing down and why that's important. I think that's a part of self-care too. And just a little bit more on self-care. People think, oh, self-care equals going to the spa. Self-care equals all of this extravagant stuff. Sometimes self-care is like you said, I just went to sleep. and I slept for about 10 hours because my body and my mind needed it. And then I woke up the next day and I felt a little bit better. That is self-care, right? You maybe didn't get anything done, but you did. So I think that we need to give ourselves permission to learn how to manage and deal with our own feelings, because for many people, they are experiencing feelings in ways that they never experienced in their whole entire life or didn't know how to put words to them, right? And if you don't know how to put words to something that's so powerful within, it is very, very, very difficult. Use other substances or go in other ways that are harmful because they don't know what to do or how to cope with it. And this is a time too where a lot of substance use or eating or things like that are really, really elevated, and how to take care. So if your self-care is walking a little bit more, if your self-care is reducing the number of glasses of wine, if it's only talking to people that actually make you laugh, and that includes you can't talk to your mom for a week or your dad or whatever, just to get a little bit of break, I think that's okay. We can give ourselves permission to do that, whatever works for you, no judgment, right? So obviously, I'm very passionate about this because I could talk about this forever, but thank you for that, for the time.
No problem. So Jason, I appreciate you being patient with us, Jason. What are some simple things that you have done to kind of cope with this? We talked about how you take a lot of walks behind the coffee shop. What are some other things that you're doing?
I have been trying to drink water and stretch. Currently, I'm feeling real heavy, and it's code for I'm depressed at the moment. And like I've seen it come and go in my life, and I've kind of hit a real low bottom about 3 times over the last 4 months, and it just feels like I'm there. And so I take it day by day, kind of like an AA type approach. And if I have to lay down or not do the dishes, or do the dishes, I don't know. I'm just okay with my 100%, and that doesn't look great right now. The grace and forgiveness of self is super important. And so yeah, I've just been doing the little things I can, and know that it'll pass, as long as I can do the little things to regain that sense of purpose and just enough strength to go on. I mean, I do a lot in a day, and I used to do a lot in a day. And this summer has been great to kind of sit back and go, well, that's not healthy. I accomplished more than I needed to. And so I've definitely lowered my expectations about what I'm capable of for what I plan to do. At the end of the day, if I don't have something done on a to-do list, I just throw it away and, make another one tomorrow.
So I would just add, I don't want to get too much on my own personal stuff, but I've kind of had the opposite problem from a lot of people being in the news business, where staying busy has not been the issue. The world is literally on fire, as you can see in my background. So writing about it, staying busy. We went through a period, where June we had like 1 million page views. We had like our best month ever in the history of the site. It was incredible. But where I ran into trouble is when we came off of that, and we started to hit kind of a lull in July, where basically we were starting to become accustomed to this is going to be reality, and there wasn't as much new stuff going on. And so I think that contributed to sort of a downturn, because it's like when all you're doing is putting out fires and you're geared towards that, and suddenly there's no fire, you're still keyed up to want to put out the fire. You know what I'm saying? So it's hard to like deprogram yourself from that. So I don't have any tips as far as getting over that, but I do agree that giving yourself grace is important. Giving yourself permission to relax and not worry about it so much. I wanted to ask a question. We've got some other great questions coming in. I wanted to ask a question of our group. One of the things that I have heard consistently throughout the discussion about reopening schools is the effects of kids being out of school are worse than the risks of COVID. They talk about the effects of depression and suicidal ideation and all that which that seems like a normal outcome when you're disrupted from your routine. But I was wondering if I could get the room to speak to that. Are the effects of the social isolation actually more harmful than COVID? Jason, we'll start with you.
I have heard some pretty awful suicide stories the last couple of months. I don't know. It's always been hard, like it's COVID is yeah, it's a good excuse to get down about the world, but it's always been on fire. And so like taking that, knowing that the world is an awful place, there's also the flip side of that. And so like when I'm depressed, it's easier for me to just get angry than to sit and be patient and look for kind or look for the grace that's all around us. So I don't know, especially with all the misinformation. Who knows what's not? So I just want to show empathy for the folks around me and appreciate that when I get that from other people. Yeah.
Well, I just want to add that we didn't start the fire, and it's always been burning since the world's been turning. Just wanted to throw that out there. Laura, what do you think about this question? This idea that the cure is worse than the virus itself, if you will.
Well, I think that because children are resilient, and people are resilient, that if the energies have its way, the universe has its way, God has its way, whatever you believe, that you will have time to be in different situations. But if you get sick and your parents get sick and they, God forbid, die, then there's no more opportunity. And so it is not ideal. I mean, I've definitely seen kids. I work with teenagers. I've seen my own family. I talk to people every day that the identity that children have through their friends, through their school, through their activities, through sports, right, through music, with all of that being stripped in the way that it has, they're left, pretty shaken. And I think that it's interesting. It's so different than when I was growing up, that a lot of it is how much activity does your kid, what are they involved in, right? So if you're going down the street, you see the moms in the cars, and I'm guilty of that. Like, here's a magnet for volleyball, and here's one for basketball, and here's the honor society one, right? And I'm like, yeah, and I'm a PTA mom, and look, I'm a badass, right? And so you strip all that away from the kids and also the families, then people are feeling very lost, and they're having to reevaluate, what is my identity? Who am I? Right? And so no question that it is tough. And that's just kind of on an existential level, on a very basic level. Kids are using schools for meals, and they are using schools for safety time, because families are complicated and sometimes dangerous. And so, not everybody has a laptop, and not everybody has Wi-Fi. And so what is happening? So it is very, very difficult. I wouldn't minimize any of it, but I do think about when they say, well, the children don't get sick as easily, but what if the teacher does? But what if the parent does? And what if that grandparent does? And then what happens, right? And so I think what's unfortunate in the framing of this media is the either or, and it's all in between. It's a both and. Right. And so kids are needing to be in school, and people need to stay safe. And there's all in between. And can we respect all that's in between? You kind of spoke to that earlier, when you were talking about your own children, and, do you want so-and-so to die? It's like, who said that? No, I can still be sad that my child may not be able to start school, period. Right. And I want their teacher, and I want us to stay safe as well.
Zach and Heather, what are your thoughts on this idea of the cure being worse than the actual virus itself?
After Laura's, there's nothing to say to add to that. I think that's everything that we talk about every single day. Like she said, kids are using schools, and now they can't go to school, and they can't go to their friend's house, and those are all their escapes. But then there is no opportunity. So there's nothing to add to that for me.
Coming from a child who had school was my escape. I had perfect attendance every year. I I have a friend who's a teacher, and she asked me, how did I feel about her going back and teaching? And I think it's just a very she wants to go back and teach because she wants to protect. She was my best friend in school. She wants to protect kids like me. And I was like gobsmacked. I didn't know what to say. Like, it's a polarizing issue, and I think it's a very family, personal decision. I have a brother-in-law, sister-in-law and two nephews who I think their family is loving being at home together. Yes, do they get exhausted? Yes. So I think I don't even know how to feel. I'm just grateful for the teachers who are willing to go back, and that's how my friend is. And I'm just sending lots of positive energy for her safety.
So before we get to Christina, I do want to note that we had a person in our chat throw out the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number. If you are watching this and you're feeling, you're having those thoughts, please give them a call. We definitely are glad that you're here and listening, but we want to make sure that you know that number is available in the chat for you. Christina, what are your thoughts on this idea of the cure itself being worse than the actual virus?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly can't speak to which is worse, right? I only know from the mental health side what that looks like because of working with it every day. But I think Laura hit the nail on the head when there's no room to kind of feel both of those. I mean, there's thought and opinion shaming everywhere we look, right? I mean, we can't say anything. We just can't speak to anything because somebody around us is going to feel completely different. And it's just, I think as a society, we just don't feel free to just, feel how we want to feel and have an opinion or a thought about it. But I do know, it's so important, I think, for adults and kids that we have this separation of school and home. And it's not happening. And that's going to take a toll on everybody. That's just the name of the game. That's just how it's going to happen. And so, I think for kids, it's they thrive on this schedule and routine, and they get up and they get ready for school and they have their breakfast and they get on the bus with their friends. And, there's a million visuals all over the classroom about our schedule every day and what we're going to do. And they're so programmed and they thrive on that. Right. And they know the rules and where they stand in line. And it's a whole entire day of that. And they know what's going to happen every day. And that's so good for them. And it's going to be really difficult. It's difficult for parents to even emulate that because they're not teachers, they're parents. Right. And so, our expectations of what the parents need to be doing when they also have a full-time job to hold down, it is going to take a toll on everyone. It just is. And at the beginning of all of this, I heard from a lot of my kids of all ages that I'm so afraid to be forgotten, right? Because the end of our school is just kind of cut short, and we have a whole summer where maybe sometimes I normally would have seen my friends, but I can't at all. I can't leave the house. And I think too, it's, I think different districts, different schools are going to have their classrooms are going to look different. I've heard different things, where kids are going to be, all day on Zoom, half the day, it's going to be broken up. But I know for me, I thrive on that human interaction. So my telehealth sessions they're way more exhausting than if I were in person. And so it's just going to take a physical toll. I think it's just going to take a mental toll on everyone. And we know that, the suicide rates have definitely increased greatly because of this. So,
yeah. And I can understand why, because there are days where I'm just like, I just want to disappear. I mean, I just want to not deal with the world that we're dealing with, and it's tough. So I definitely feel that. We are coming up on the hour. I wanted to invite our guests to stay for an extra half hour, if that's okay. If you got to drop the meeting, I understand, but if you're good with it, I am. We're having a good discussion. Any objections? We're good to go? Okay, great. So if you are watching, this is the Decaturish.com Twitch Show. I'm your host, editor, and publisher, Dan Wisenhunt. Our guests today are Jason Waller, who owns Waller's Coffee Shop, Laura Morse, who is a professional counselor, Christina Carrick, who is a therapist and professional counselor, Zach Mitchell, who is the director of iResearch Atlanta, and Heather Bites, who is the co-owner of iResearch Atlanta. This episode was actually recommended by a friend of ours who contributes to Decaturish, Nikki Salcedo, and she is actually in our chat today, and we thank her for recommending this topic because I think it's been very helpful to a lot of people. And she also has a question. She asks, can you talk about your favorite apps, I guess phone apps, for mental health? Does anybody want to take a stab at this? Anybody have any favorite? Laura?
Well, let's see. For mental health, I don't. Well, let's see. That's not true. So one thing that I've been doing and trying to share with friends and clients is some of the apps that help you to look at anxiety and meditation, right? So usually when people call me or friends are like, I don't know what's going on, but I need some assistance, then I'm saying check out Psychology Today for therapists because it's excellent when it comes to filters. You can put, I want a male therapist who specializes in couples counseling that lives in Decatur, who accepts Blue Cross Blue Shield, go, and you'll get a list of providers. So I like that if you're seeking therapy. As far as apps though, I've downloaded Calm and I've downloaded Insight Timer, and I know there's plenty of others. Calm is nice, except for, after a while you they really want you to pay for a subscription, right? So for Insight Timer, they have some really nice guided meditations, and I think you could get more free content. For healthcare workers, Calm was allowing healthcare workers to put in their information, and they were doing it free. And so there are lots of them out there. And so take the time to look on your phone. There's podcasts that are available that will help you do guided meditations. You can do walking meditations. You can tailor it to your interests, music. So I wish I had a little bit more specific, and I probably would research that. And if I do, I can share that later on. But hopefully somebody else has some good ideas.
Yeah, does anybody else have any apps they'd like to recommend while we're here?
One that I really like is called Headspace. So meditation. Really good for sleep. It's gives you a lot of positive vibes throughout the day. So I really like Headspace. I recommend that a lot. Like Laura, I've used Calm too, but yeah, then you have to pay for it. So check out Headspace.
Cool. Anybody else want to jump in?
On a different note, just I've learned to lately get up with music that makes me feel happy. Whatever that may be. Like for me, it's Jason Mraz. I just love his message. And so if I wake up and I'm feeling not my best, I like hearing that I can change. His message for me is very groovy, and I have a couple of others as well. But I think getting up and listening to somebody that music is so powerful, and listening to it puts you in a headspace.
Yeah, that's Amy Mann for me. I don't know if anybody knows her, but she's a great singer-songwriter, and whatever she's pulling her inspiration from, I get what she's going for. And it can be kind of sad music, but it can be uplifting too. Definitely another album that I've been really into lately is Fits and the Tantrums, which they did a album called Picking Up the Pieces, and damn, so much of that seems so relevant to what's going on. I think this album was released a few years ago, but I highly recommend Fits and the Tantrums, Picking Up the Pieces if you haven't heard that yet. Christina, I wanted to go back to something you said, and that was about opinion shaming. Opinion shaming. Yes, I see this a lot. I see it a lot, and it's particularly when it comes to parents who are sad that their children cannot go to school. I see it constantly. Somebody's like, I'm sad that my kid can't go to school. And they're like, well, at least they're not dead. I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, obviously, but you could still be sad, right? You could still have that feel. do you think that social media is in any way helping? Are there positive aspects to it, or do we need to just turn that the hell off? For me, it's hard because I need it for my work. That's where a lot of my work happens. But for other people where that's optional, I mean, is social media helping in any way, or should we just turn it off?
I know. I definitely think it's helping. I think um, it takes it takes some effort on our part that to block the ones that aren't helpful. To not read through those threads that are, because it's not like there's not enough parent shaming already, right?
Yeah.
That we kind of have to add this to it. But it is. I think it's having the control and having the choice to block those that aren't feeding you, that are toxic, right? And there are so many other people that are putting out such positive content that allow for feelings of all kinds. And so it's just a matter of finding those. And I've had to do that, right? And so and you start to feel it. You start to feel drained by all of those. And so it's really being self-aware of what you're looking at. And it could be news outlets for you. There are some people who just have it on the background. And even while I'm not watching it, it still seeps into you. I mean, you're gaining something from it in the background. And I don't know that is completely helpful, right? So, and for some people, it's family members that they're following on Instagram or Facebook or any of the outlets, or friends that they've had for years. And well, I don't want to block them, and that would be considered self-care. And if that's just kind of a boundary that you need for yourself, then that's what you need, and that's okay. But yeah, I certainly. There are so many outlets out there that are not toxic and positive. Yeah.
Well, I will say it's funny you mentioned that, because of course we have to cover COVID, not only because it's an important pandemic, but because the CDC is in our backyard, and a lot of the people that work at CDC and Emory read us, so they have a certain level of expectation for their local news outlet. But it's funny, I wrote a story the other day about a road closing, and I got a whole lot of thank you for writing that road closing story. It had nothing to do with COVID, but people were so appreciative that we were taking a break from the COVID and just talk about stuff that's going on in the community. Like, life is still happening, life is still going on. It's weird, but it's happening. Heather and Zach, is social media helping or hurting in your opinion?
On you.
Yeah, I think it's helping as long as you take the time to block the things you don't want to see. I think right now, friends, social media, friends and family are coming. That's one of the only ways that they can come together. That's everybody's doing more and more of these Zoom calls, and they're posting the old throwback Thursday photos and wishing for a good time again, and kind of seeing some of that positivity go back and forth. And I also think that people are also sharing now. Everybody is trying to get out of some of the COVID, like you said, like it's like the COVID trance, right? Where you wake up, we're thinking about it. We're thinking about it all day long. You can't walk out to your car. You can't check your mail. And now it's an escape for a lot of people. And kids too, especially right now. I think that kids being able to have the outlet to be able to talk to their friends, see what's going on, see some photos of places that maybe they would have liked to travel to this summer. It is helpful.
Laura, what do you think? Social media helping or harming?
I think both and. I had situations personally for me where it was hurting in the sense of being very disappointed in people that I knew and trust, and their response to, George Floyd or Ahmaud Arbery or what have you, and just being like, really, I've known you all this time, and now I get to see that, you don't care about, me or my family in the way that I thought, right? So then you could go down so many rabbit holes in that, right? Helping because there are networks out there, to Christina's point, where mothers are coming together and saying, look, I stay at home, I work full time. How can we use each other, and what creative things can we come up with? Because when people are feeling depressed and down, the creativity that they might have normally, or the ability to make a decision, it starts to wane, right? And so people get to this this place of almost analysis paralysis, right? So to log on and say, oh, wait a minute, I could do this, right? Now, maybe they would have thought about that 5 months ago, but in this state of their existence, they weren't even able to think of something like that, and it's helpful, right? And I think what Christina said is really, really important, is why it's important to have boundaries. Know what our own personal boundaries are, and for other people. Boundaries aren't about just blocking out everybody else. You don't have to create a fortress to have boundaries. It's more about, finding ways to kind of protect yourself, what is yours. It's a form of self-care, and it's actually kind of goes along the same, like we teach people how to treat us, right? So if we're allowing people to shame us, not allowing people to shame us, but people will try, right? But just say, you know what, if that's all you can give to me, this is the only energy you're willing to bring to me, I really don't need to be, you don't need to have access to me in the way that you used to having access, because I don't have the tolerance for it right now, and that is okay. So social media can be good because you can block. My daughter loves TikTok because she can filter in only fun videos for her. Now she can also be on that for like 12 hours straight, but she says at least she can look at happy dancing and singing for 12 hours straight instead of people hating each other and politics, right? So I think you have to know what your own boundaries are and levels to re-engaging, but it's a complicated, it can be very complicated.
Jason, social media, helping or hurting right now?
It's definitely hurting me. And one is like fear of missing out, watching these people go on vacation and going to do fun things. Yeah. And I'm like, man, I could do that. Sorry about that. I look at it as a magazine, and I get to choose what pages I have on there and what it comes at me. And so I've got blocked family members because I just don't want to see the dumb memes and get angry at them and just let them be themselves. I don't have to fight. I don't have to change anybody's mind. It's just not on my to-do list. And so if I don't want to see you, I'll let you go. I've been using it for my work as well. I'm just trying to keep up with the different venues and the different coffee shops and restaurants. And I was really proud of the restaurant industry for shutting itself down. We were all calling each other like, "Hey, what are you doing? What's going on? How do you feel about this?" The coffee shops in the Decatur area are all awful. They're all awesome people, and I feel like we look out for each other. And it was, so I was using social media to stay in contact with a lot of these people, and just trying to take in all of the different information I could to make, safe and rational decisions. I think. Oh, and the other thing was, if you're using social media, I feel like that's healthy. If social media is using you, that's not healthy. And I feel like that's the either or for me, is that, if I'm using it or if I'm like learning from it, then it can be in my life. And currently I was like I mentioned before, I'm not my 100%. I'm not at my best right now. And so I just find myself, somebody said doom scrolling. I thought that, yeah, that's perfect. So yeah, I don't know. I definitely could without it.
You could go down any number of rabbit holes if you want to. It's the sad part. Laura, I wanted to ask you, and we could probably pull this out into a whole different episode, but just briefly, this is affecting black people and readers who are people of color a lot more for a lot of different reasons. Obviously, you see these daily reminders in the news of the bullshit that black people put up with every day in terms of racism. And then, of course, COVID is having a disproportionate effect upon black people and people of color. I don't know if it was you or Jason or somebody said, we don't have to change how people feel if we don't want to, but I feel like that is kind of at odds with a lot of what I'm feeling right now is, maybe I shouldn't ignore when somebody says something that they need to be educated about. How can we be good allies to people of color right now who are feeling this on a totally different level than we are?
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for that question. It has been consuming me. That very question has consumed me for a very long time. And it's just interesting the arc of all of this. I saw an article that said, timeline. And so what I realized is that my son was in sixth grade when Trayvon Martin was killed, and then he was in ninth grade when Philando Castile was killed, and then he was, 11th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, right? And so you can see the progression, and that's just names of people that everybody might know. That doesn't count for the other. And so when George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, because was basically in our backyard being in Georgia, right? And at that time, I was trying to get my son to exercise more and not be on his gaming system because I could tell that he was getting depressed. I'm like, you know what? You should start running. You used to play basketball, get out there and start running. And he said, okay, that's a good idea. And then Ahmaud Arbery was killed, and he's like, I'm not going outside in my own neighborhood. We live in a suburb neighborhood, and after that, I just got so angry, right? And I thought, why am I carrying this alone with my Black friends? And thankfully, I have many. I was like, I have friends of all races and ethnicities and religion. Why is everybody so quiet? But then people didn't get quiet. Right. I think after George Floyd, people decided they didn't want to be quiet anymore. So one of the things that I started to do was have my own courage for those friends of mine that are not Black and say, you know what, don't send me a private message anymore to my Facebook. Like, hey, Laura, I know it's probably really difficult. No, you say something publicly and let other people know that you're concerned about this too. And it was interesting to see who would do that, right? I've had friends that have like, you know what, I'm not just going to tell people that I don't, Black Lives Matter. They're like, I'm going to show you Black Lives Matter. I have a friend, her name is Emma Schwartz. She was like, we're going to get all these moms together that we've been knowing since first grade, and we're going to have Zoom calls and we're going to have conversation, and you can't be on this call if you're not doing your homework. So the next time we meet, you need to have read a book. We're going to have some honest conversation. And I just sit back. And I love it because she's like, we have work to do. Laura has been doing the work, living the work. She's trying to protect her family. She can't answer all these questions. And I realize my own privilege through education or money or environment, right? And so the allyship is the honesty, right? Is to take time to read a little bit, to say, just because I'm willing to understand that I have privilege doesn't make me an evil person. It's not about that. This is a system that was created a long time ago intentionally, but we have opportunity now. And so I'll try to keep it in a nutshell because, I could go on and on and on.
Well, yeah, you and I should probably do our own show on it. Yeah, I think it would be worth having that discussion as well. So we are at 7:12. This is the Decaturish.com Twitch show. I am your host, editor, and publisher Dan Wisenhunt. Our guests again are Jason Waller with Waller's Coffee Shop, Laura Morse, who's a professional counselor, Christina Carrick, who's a therapist and counselor, Zach Mitchell, who is the director of iResearch ATL, and Heather Bites, who is the co-owner of iResearch ATL. Wanted to remind people that the National Suicide Prevention Hotline Lifeline number is 1-800-273-8255. Again, that number is 1-800-273-8255. If you're watching this and you need to talk to somebody, give them a call. Please do that before you do something foolish. There's also a public toll-free emotional support line, according to Nikki Salcedo. That number is 866-342-6892. Again, that number is 866-342-6892, and that is free, and there is no insurance required for that if you want to take advantage of it. So I wanted to end on this question, and I understand that I'm not trying to pigeonhole y'all into a political position, because this might just be more my perception than it is reality. But I feel like part of the problem that we have had in this national pandemic response is that half of the country generally doesn't like the other half. Maybe that's overstating it a bit, but when people fundamentally mistrust each other that much and dislike each other that much, it's hard to rally around a common solution for a public good. And a lot of times I'll hear, well, that's a toxic relationship. You need to remove yourself from that. Or when you're talking about toxic people on Facebook, you need to block them. How do we deal with a situation where the whole country is sort of toxic to the point where we aren't even going to do basic stuff to protect each other because we just dislike each other that much? How do we deal with that? And that's how I want to close. And Jason, we'll start with you on that. Might need to unmute you.
There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So burn it all down is and
All right,
it's
thank you, Jason. No.
Yeah. But rooting yourself in empathy and gratitude. Personally, like, who cares what anyone else around you is doing? If you can center yourself with what you're grateful for, you usually start to grow out from that and show more empathy to the people around you. When I'm, I need to get up and get some water. And that's the basic thing. I lose sight of that a good bit, and because I'm angry. I have a daughter that is a person of color, and I remember. I mean, I've got several stories where I'm seeing her suffer because of that, and that's ridiculous, and it hurts me to think that she lives in a world where relatives don't think of her as a person, as a human being. It's very painful. And so we went to one of the marches in downtown Decatur, my wife and I, and seeing that kind of response gave me hope. And seeing a lot of people come out and say yes, or saying, no, this is not right. These kind of things should not be happening around us. And, but social media gets you all riled up. Having to wear a mask when you don't want to get you riled up. And what works for me is disregarding everything and getting back to what I'm grateful for and what is important to me. A good buddy just sent me a message yesterday saying, you've been doing what you have to do, and you need to focus on what's important to you. And I'm sitting right there with that right now, trying to figure out what is important to me and focus on that and build on that instead of grieve that things aren't going the way I would like them to go in our country. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, you can have conversations, but you're not going to change anybody's mind in the comment section. So it's got to be a one-on-one thing. Like, online is not where anything's going to get better.
And unfortunately, that's where most of our conversations have to happen right now because of where we're at. Right. Laura, what toxic relationship you can get yourself out of, a toxic work environment, you can find another job. How do you deal with living in a country that is in this mutual toxic relationship with each other?
I love what Jason said about gratitude. It's actually helped me to stay as grounded as I can possibly stay. And I don't say this on a global. I mean, I have family members that have differing political opinions, and it has been a rift since 2016. And I don't know if it will ever be repaired, if I'm being really honest about it. And that's painful. What helps me is every night when I go to bed, I say, who do I love the most, and are they safe? And if they are, then I say tomorrow is another opportunity. And then hopefully that expands out a little bit. What is the saying of be the change, right? I want to try to be the change. If I consume myself with hate and my own toxicity, it's not going to be helpful I'm not going to be helpful to anybody, to the people that I love the most, right? And so I guess just one person at a time. And I just say that just so I can remain hopeful. And then, there's action, of course, other things that you can do, but just to give myself the spiritual sense of upliftment and purpose, I have to get back to gratitude.
Great. That's really good advice. Heather, And Zach, same question. We can remove ourselves from toxic relationships. We can remove ourselves from toxic work situations. How do you deal with living in a country where everybody is in a toxic relationship, as it were, at least politically?
For me, before I came on this show tonight, I was logging onto the Facebook, and I have a whole side of the family who I just cannot believe where they are in their lives, and I was sort of focused on that. And I'm so grateful for just hearing from Jason, Laura, and Christina, and just hearing their perspective and how they're getting by. It kind of makes me better, because it is hard, even as a professional, going in and seeing people and trying to remain in my own person and remain calm and good for some, and at least good for somebody else in that moment. But knowing that my aunt and my cousin and my this and my that are saying things that are the antithesis of me and in my belief system, it's hard. So hearing this tonight actually is therapeutic for me. It is very difficult, and then I watch it be difficult with the people I see, and so this has just been super helpful for me, and I applaud you for who you brought on tonight. It's helpful. Thank you.
Zach, did you want to add anything?
I just think that right now, I think everything just feels so much more toxic because everybody has nothing else to do except troll online, or, everybody that lives in my apartment complex. It's so funny now. They're having to send out letters to everybody to talk about, all the angry neighbors, and everybody's too loud, and calm this down, and shut your kids up, and stop cooking. And it's just everywhere right now. It's just like, okay, it's like, and I keep just trying to remain, like, my word for this year before all this was just genuine. And I just remain genuine to, people that I want to be around, my genuine beliefs, and just always checking my intentions again, and if I am not, like Jason said, if the social media or my friend group is not, they're not helping me, and they're more using me, it's a quick block right now. That's the other easiest thing right now, because I don't have to see you because I'm not going anywhere. And I think right now it's just remain genuine, and, just try to just check your intentions. And, there's been a lot of politics right now, and there needed to have been for a lot of different issues. And I think that's one thing that I am grateful for, because on the other side, it gives you time to actually listen and hear people. And, I had this quote up in my office, there's two kinds of listeners: people that truly just listen to hear, and then people that listen just to answer a question. And I think right now people, have the time that are actually, they're just listening and learning. And hopefully, the people that truly don't want to be here, sometimes I'm like, how far is Canada and what I got to do to move there? But other than that, I just think, it's going to be time, and hopefully everybody can just remain genuine.
Well, Christina, we'll let you have the last word on that. Living in a country that is in a mutually toxic political relationship, how do you deal with a toxic relationship that you can't extricate yourself from?
Yeah, I think everybody said some really great points. It's, what I'm hearing, being grateful and having intention. I know that my beliefs, when I'm hearing such opposing beliefs, they feel just as strongly as I do. And so I think more focusing on how I can have important conversations with people who will listen, and vice versa, and not having just to talk, right? And so, and knowing when to just stop and kind of not dig holes, but doing what I can. And if it gets to be too much, then I go back to just in my own household, right? So forget the country, forget my neighbor. I'm going back to my own household, and what am I grateful for? Who am I grateful for? Because it takes a toll. All of these really polarizing conversations. But then I go back to what, when I have my space and I can be grateful and kind of be grounded again, I go back to what can I focus on? What can I do better for my community? In what ways can I make change? But there are ways to do it and to also be kind, right? I don't kind of have to be sucked into those toxic, terrible, the conversations that I'm hearing and that I'm seeing. I choose. I don't have to get sucked into those. I will focus on what I can do positively.
Well, that is a great note to end it on. I want to thank our panelists so much for joining us today. I'd like to do another mental health episode down the road. I hope you'll all be interested in coming back to talk about that with us. This is the Decaturish.com Twitch Show. Our guests today have been Jason Waller with Waller's Coffee Shop, Laura Morse, who's a professional counselor, Christina Carrick, who you just heard from, who's a counselor and a therapist, Zach Mitchell, who is director of iResearch ATL, and Heather Bites, who is co-owner of iResearch ATL. Wanted to let everyone know we've got kind of a fun show coming up on Friday at 6 o'clock. It's going to be a little different. It's going to be a cocktail hour, and we're going to have people from all different political affiliations. We're going to have Republicans and Democrats, people who just don't agree, and we're all going to have a beer. We're going to drink responsibly, and we're just going to talk, and we're going to try to talk for a whole hour without getting into politics, and I'm going to see how that goes. But we're going to try to do that the last Friday of the month. I think that's a good kick back and unwind sort of tradition that we should do. So I hope you will all join us this Friday at 6 o'clock. Thank you all for watching today's episode of the Decaturish Twitch Show. Stay healthy, stay safe. If you need the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number, again, that number is 1-800-273-8255. Again, that is 1-800-273-8255. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see you on Friday. Take care. Hold on.